future shine bright.
It is Thursday, August the 14th, 2025, and I am joined today by our office manager, Ethan Chase, and the topic of the podcast today is tutoring. So if you've listened to any of our previous podcasts, you know I feel that our practice is a three-legged stool: college planning, tutoring, and test prep. So we've already talked about the other two, so today we're going to talk about tutoring and how we do it and all that good stuff. So you all who are parents or students yourself can make a decision if you would like to come here and get some help. So, you know, there's a strong correlation between a student's success in the classroom and his or her success in life. I mean, I truly feel that. For all these years I've been helping kids work toward college, making good grades. And I always tell the kids, you need to understand why you need to make good grades. Because I think, you know, a lot of people spend a lot of time talking at kids and not to kids. And kids are very smart. Actually, kids are smarter today than I've ever seen kids. I tell them, you've got to understand why you've got to make good grades. You need to equate your grades in your head to the standard of living you want to have when you're my age. And that's up there now, Ethan. So I made straight A's in school, and I have a straight A life. So I'm not telling kids that they have to make straight A's, because I know how stressful that is. I mean, I made my own self crazy trying to be an overachieving crazy chick, but I think all kids should make A's and B's to have an A and B life. And I think that's relatively simple, and I think that it's easy for them to do. Now, let's talk about why I feel so strongly about tutoring. Me saying that I was an overachieving crazy student. I truly was. I put so much pressure on myself. Nobody put it on me. And yes, I was raised by two teachers, but I put all the pressure on myself. You know, I couldn't have just an A with, you know, a 90. I had to have an A with a 99. I really never struggled in high school. I mean, I just breezed through everything. I got up through calculus. My mom was a math teacher. I go off to Marshall, go straight into calculus, and I was lost. I've never been lost in a class in my life, never. And it was not like these days where I could call my mom and share a screen. It was those days where I had to stand in line at a phone booth for 30 minutes with a dime to call home. And my mom was like, don't call home crying. There's nothing I can do about it. In my overachieving head, there was no way I was ever going to ask for help. There was no way I was ever going to get tutored. Are you kidding me? Little Miss Perfect Straight A's was never going to go get tutored. And so I really suffered through that class for the first time in my life, being away from home, didn't know what I was doing. I'd already been taught the material, but it was just at a completely different level. And the kids from Huntington High, even though I had gotten through calculus and they had gotten through calculus academically, they were so far ahead of me. And I get that coming out of a rural county high school, as you did, Ethan. When I look back on it now, I'm like, listen here, sister, you should have went and got tutoring. So from a personal perspective, I tell everyone, I promise you kids, there is going to come a class that is going to slap you upside the head. And when it does, you need to learn how to advocate for yourself, which is a big SAT word probably, but you need to learn how to help yourself. And nobody ever said to me, Jamie, why wouldn't you just go to the TA or, you know, a graduate assistant or somebody and just get help instead of laying in your bed at night crying because you couldn't get the calculus? Now, I finally pulled an A out of it, but it was very exhausting. So knowing what I know now, smart kids get tutored and dumb kids will just take that bad grade. And I preach that, Ethan. You know I preach that. So back in 2010, when I had this idea I was going to open up the tutoring center, I had a condo in Fort Lauderdale at the time. And within like a 5-mile radius, there were about 8 tutoring centers. And I went to each one of them, acted like we were moving into town, and, you know, tell me about your tutoring center, da-da-da-da. Really, I was just on a recognizant mission because, you know, I never got married, never had kids. So I was like, yeah, we're moving into town, and my son struggles in math, and, you know, I'd just like to know what your services are. Now, I go back and sit in my condo by myself and I crafted the tutoring center based on all of the previous 15 years. At that time, I'd been in business 15 years. 15 years of what parents complained about, what kids complained about, what tutors complained about, and I designed my own tutoring center. So our tutoring center is really not like anybody else's. I actually think it's more designed around how a tutoring center is at a university. And we can talk about that, Ethan, because you're freshly out of school. But at a university level, kids have to go on their own to get tutored. Now, could I make more money if I said to every parent that comes in here, well, you know what? He needs math tutoring on Tuesday and Thursday for 1 hour, and you need to sign a contract, and that'll get us all the way through 36 weeks. Oh my gosh, think about how much money I'd make. I probably would have retired by now. But guess what? The kids would have hated me because that's what everybody complained about. The kids complained about the fact that they had to have a tutor and they had to go every Wednesday at 5 o'clock, whether they had anything to work on or not, and they didn't like that. And I get that from a tutoring perspective. If you're going to tutor, you're going to fill up your book, and the kids have to come either way about it. So I thought, well, I'm just going to play my numbers because I got a lot of kids that I work with, and I'm just going to say, you as a tutor, I'm going to open it up. You tutor. I collect the money. I pay you. You don't have to worry about it, and we'll fill up your schedule. So here at my place, we don't have contracts for tutoring. It's use it as you need it. And I really try to instill, especially on the students that I work with in the graduation club, that you have got to get used to advocating for yourself. You have got to get used to helping yourself. And the kids, will say, well, that teacher's not any good. That teacher's crazy, da-da-da-da. You know how they do. And now listen, me being raised by 2 teachers, I listened to my parents complain about the fact that they would have kids struggling in their class and would never come and say anything. And I remember one day my dad going, you know what, if that kid doesn't give a crap, I don't either because I got other stuff to worry about. And it's the truth. So I tell the kids, you have got to communicate with your teachers. You've got to talk to them. And yes, there are good teachers, there are bad teachers, there are crazy teachers, there are sick teachers, there are all kinds of teachers. And those teachers may not teach the way that you learn, but that teacher is going to stay there teaching, and you're the one that has to grasp the material and go on. So you have got to take responsibility for your own grades because a college admissions officer is going to look at your transcript. Those are not your parents' grades. Those are not your teachers' grades. Those are your grades. And whether we like it or not, we live in a very judgmental society. And somebody's going to open up a file and look at your transcript and make a decision on you. And if you've got everything on a transcript from A to F, you know what they're going to think? This kid will never make it in university, so you're rejected. And so then kids get all tore up. I mean, Ethan, heaven forbid when kids get rejected, even from universities that they don't like. So when I do their college list, and then I make them go through and tell me, do you like it, love it, and so is your interest there low, high? So they tickle me because they'll get rejected from a university. And they're like, can you believe that? Can you believe I got declined from there? Can you believe the University of Tennessee declined me? Can you believe the University of Georgia declined me? Which in my head, I know it's probably because they don't live in that state, right? And then I'm like, well, wait, but just a minute. Look here. You said your interest there was low. I know, but why would they reject me? So I'm like, well, you would have rejected them. So what difference does it make if they reject you? Just move on. I'm 65 years old. I've never been married. Look how well I deal with rejection, Ethan. But people are making a judgment on you based on your transcript, correct? So I feel like part of what we do here is to make kids understand why they need tutoring. Now, Ethan, you're on the phone. You have a lot of people that are coming in that are doing tutoring and test prep that don't use the college planning side, which, quite frankly, I think that's insane. I think that's like putting the cart before the horse, like not understanding why you're doing what you're doing. But I feel that part of what parents understand and kids have to understand is why we do what we do. And yes, you can go on YouTube and teach yourself how to do algebra. But guess what? You don't learn. You don't have somebody going, okay, you got that test Friday, you got it. You don't have somebody instilling confidence and hope and self-esteem in these kids like we do. So, what do you think from talking on the phone and parents calling in? What do you think is the biggest concern for parents when it comes to grades in school?
Something I see happening, nearly every single time is these students and parents wait until it's almost too late. It's second semester, the student has an F or maybe a low D, and they expect tutoring to help. So I think the biggest issue is just holding off too long. They know that the student's struggling. The student knows they're struggling. They go from an A to a B to a C, and it's this progression towards a failing grade, and they just hold off. They don't take initiative when they still have time to raise their grade, to actually understand the concepts or the material before it's too late, and then they just are stuck with that low grade on their transcript.
So, in other words, what you're saying, our philosophy is you need to play offense instead of defense. So, all these kids play sports, right? We feel, now we got the school starting this week, so we feel that you should start out with a tutor. And then when you get in 6 or 7 weeks, if you're fine in the class, drop the tutor. Because what happens is everybody waits till they get their first 6, 9 weeks grades out, and then they've had a grade drop, and then they call, and then they want to get in, and then they expect a miracle to go from a D in math to an A, and I'm like, all the king's horses and all the king's men can't bring that math back up again. So we feel here that you should play offense, not defense. We also have online tutoring, and as you said, we tutor K through 12. So if you have kids who can't drive, of course, or if you're a parent that doesn't get off work, we can accommodate the kids virtually by Zoom, which works out really, really well for us. So we do well in Zoom. And I just passed Taylor, one of our tutors, in the hall yesterday. And she said, "You know what? I am so excited. I have mastered how to do this tutoring online with the online whiteboard." And she was so excited. And I think that's really awesome. So our point is, you gotta play offense, not defense. I think the funniest thing, well, it's not funny, it's very sad. But the one thing that's so amazing for me is who runs the household these days. You know, personally, somewhere in my 30-year career of doing this, there was a huge shift from the parents running the house to the kids running the house. It's interesting for me when parents call, and I'd say this started a little bit after I opened the tutoring center, because at first it was like, my student needs tutoring, he'll be there tomorrow. Somewhere we had a shift, and it started, "Hi, this is Susie, and my son has like a D in chemistry, and I think I need to get him some tutoring." "Okay, Susie, we have an opening on Thursday. So you said he has a test on Friday, so we have an opening on Thursday." "I don't know. Let me ask him when he gets home if he wants to do tutoring." What? Are you kidding me? You're going to ask this kid if he wants to come and do chemistry tutoring when he's got a D? I can tell you the answer to that. No. I think God knew what he's doing when he didn't give me kids. I'd be like, "That phone is mine." This is what my dad used to say. "That phone is mine. That car is mine. And until you do what I say, those are mine." And so I learned that when I was 14 years old that who paid my bills had total control over me. So I don't know where this shift has moved from. Do you, like, isn't that amazing to you, Ethan, that you're on the phone and that's what you hear?
Well, it's rather odd that the parent shows concern for their student failing a class or doing poorly, and the students don't even start to worry until we get them later in their junior, senior year, when they have midterms coming up or finals. They have a C in the class or a D in the class, and they don't know any of the material, and they're stressing out, and then they want to do tutoring. But it is odd that they'll hold off until it's too late. That's just the best way I can put it. That students don't show true concern until it clicks in their head that this is make it or break it time. So, well, if I mess up now, and I'm really shooting myself in the foot.
Mm-hmm. I feel like parents deal with a lot of grief, a lot of frustration, a lot of aggravation. It's amazing to me when I first started in business, it was very rare I had a divorced family. Very rare. Now, like I say, now I got some flowchart people. I have to go back and get on a whiteboard to figure out who belongs to who and who is who. And, It's just the age that we live in. And I feel like when you don't have a united home front, I was very lucky. My parents were married for 53 years and we had a very united home front. And I think it's hard when kids are bouncing back and forth between parents. I know I dated a guy and he had two kids and they were in middle school and then started in high school. And if they were at their mom's and they didn't like what she said, they'd come to his house. And then they'd get to his house and they didn't like what he said, they'd go to the grandma's house. And then they got there and they didn't like, they'd go to their grandma's house. So it's kind of like the kids are just ping-ponged around to where they could finally eventually do whatever they wanted to do. Not only that, again, I think God knew what he was doing. He didn't give me any kids. But parents are in that sandwich generation where they're trying to take care of their aged parents. And Ethan, you and I both took care of our parents. We know how exhausting that is. We tended to them till they died. And, my brother and I would sit at the hospital and be like, thank God we don't have any kids, because my brother didn't have any kids either. And I'd be like, I just don't know how parents, first of all, emotionally and physically can take care of their aged parents and take care of their kids. That's ridiculously hard. Then let's throw the money component in there. I don't know how people that have kids ever have any money. Truly, it's all I can do to get to the end of the month and keep money in the bank and keep my weight down. And I hope when I get dementia, those are two things I forget, how much I weigh and how much money I got, because I've worried my whole life about both of them. So it's sad. They don't want to pay to come in to get tutoring, yet what we know, Ethan, is that if they don't have good grades and good test scores, they're not going to get any money to go to college. And people tickle me calling in going, oh, hi, yes, can you help us find scholarships? Well, he's got like a 2.75 GPA, but he's so good looking and he's so nice and all of his teachers like him. I'm like, I don't know of a good looking, nice scholarship anywhere. And do you know how much I hear that? He's so likable. Everybody loves him. Don't you think so-and-so would give him a scholarship at that university? Nope, sure don't. If you look at a scholarship on the website of a university, if you've got this ACT or SAT and this GPA, this is how much you get. And it's simple. You look that when the grades go up and the test scores go up, the money goes up. So what about that don't you understand, right? There's no OPS. If he's good looking, let's add another $500 on. Or if she's really sweet and she takes care of everybody and, she's just really quiet, are there, don't you think somebody will give him a scholarship? Nope, sure don't. Grades, test scores. And I also feel like, and I think I've said this before, but I'm going to reiterate it again, that, the media is really damaging these kids by stating, test scores don't matter anymore. Well, they do when it comes to money. But you can still have great test scores, and if you don't have a high GPA, you're still not going to get any scholarship money. And now there's a lot of scholarships that have gone test optional, so your cumulative GPA is so important. So, we tutor here grades K through 12, and when we talk about math, how many times a day do we hear, I hate math, I hate math? And, me being raised by a math teacher, I asked my mom one time, I said, Mom, why is it that some kids are really great in math and then some kids are not? You know what she said? She said, if kids are off math in third grade, they're off. So this is why we have Lindsay Haywood here, our educational consultant who does K through 7, and I do educational planning 8 through 12. The reason that we have Lindsay now is because it would frustrate me so bad that when I would get a kid in high school, I'd think, man, I wish I'd have got this kid before third grade and got their math fixed, right? So if I were a parent and I had a kid that was below third grade, if you don't think I would bring him in here and put him with Lindsay for an hour and let her do an academic evaluation on him and figure out what you need to do, it'll be the best money you've ever spent. Because, again, you can either play offense or you can play defense. And offense is a whole lot cheaper than defense, is it not, Ethan? And here's the problem with boys, especially, because you're unusual, Ethan. I think boys are like ovens. I think boys got to get hot. And boys don't get hot till about 11th grade. And then I wish I had a dime for every kid that sat in my chair, boy that sat in my chair. And I really wish I hadn't goofed off in 8th and 9th grade. Because you know what they'll tell me? Well, that don't count. Yeah, it does count. And I never did figure out who y'all think is counting. Do you know how many times I hear that? Well, that doesn't count. Well, who's counting that? Yeah, somebody's counting it. College admissions officer's counting it. Like, it doesn't count. That grade doesn't count. Why doesn't that grade count? Well, it just doesn't count. It doesn't count till I get in 11th grade. I'm like, I don't know who you think's counting all this stuff, but not me, okay? So I think that the if you're the parent of a student and that student is struggling, it is either pay me now or pay me later. You better get them in here and get them back on track and make sure that they understand why they're doing what they're doing, because they need to figure out if you want to go to college and you want to make all A's and B's to have an A and B life, you need to get on it, right? I mean, education is the only thing that will set you free. I grew up in Logan, and thank God I was raised by teachers who, encouraged me to go to college and all that stuff. And I feel that everybody should go to college. And people ask me all the time, do you really think there's kids who should not go to college? Well, I don't think everybody has to do that, but I think all people have to have some form of upper level training. Go to a career and technical center, do something. Yes, my papa would always say, well, if you can cook, you can clean, and you can drive, you can always have a job, which I agree with that too. But I do think that we are, again, in a judgmental society where if you don't have a bachelor's degree, especially employers, will hold it against you and never pay you what you're worth. And that's another reason I think that everybody should consider some form of upper level education. And especially here in West Virginia, we have the West Virginia Invest program, which is fabulous. And it encourages kids to go to the community and technical center there's a list of the majors that it will do. And the state of West Virginia pays for it. Like, okay, that's just kind of a no-brainer. Show me the money. So I think there's a lot of ways that you can send your kids to college, but the best way to afford college is to have good grades and good test scores. Don't you think, Ethan? Just go ahead and agree with me, Ethan, because I'm right. I think that universities are much more motivated to help the kids with tutoring services. That's why most universities, they have free tutoring because they want to keep their butts in their seats. You've got to be motivated. Colleges don't like a dropout rate at all. And now, when I say boys are like ovens, girls are like little microwaves. You turn girls on, they're on, man. Bing, bing, bada, boom. And this is why women are taking over college campuses across the country. 60% women, 40% men. And I mean, I'm talking engineering, medical school, law school. When I was in accounting at Marshall, I started in 1977. There were only two of us women in the whole College of Business and Accounting. Now it's predominantly female. I even had a professor stand up in front of my face, Dr. Godfrey. He's probably dead and gone, but I couldn't stand him. And he said, women have no business being in accounting. Why are you in this class? I said, because my guidance counselor said I'd be a good accountant. And just was awful. And then it took me forever to get a job, just because at that time it was predominantly men. So, but not the case now. Who rules the world? Girls. And it's the truth. So boys are getting into college much easier with much more scholarship money and everything because colleges really want men in their classes. So I agree, Ethan. And let me say this. Sometimes we have kids who call and get tutoring for themselves because maybe their parents don't see any reason for it or whatever. And we really try hard to make sure that families understand why the kids should get tutored. And we do a great job of working with parents who are divorced or single parents who never got married, because especially for college planning, when it comes to financial aid, I really have to take the whole entire family dynamics into consideration. And as we wrap up this podcast on tutoring, I just want to say, please look at your student in a different way. And let's play offense, not defense for tutoring. Good grades, good test scores equal scholarship money for college, and that is non-taxable income. And so please get on the phone, call Ethan, 304-556-4807, or visit our website, jamiedickenson.com, and please get started today. I mean, school is starting, and just get on the phone and call. and play a little offense, not defense. And Ethan will take great care of you. So, Ethan, thanks for the podcast today. We had a great message to send out there to people. So, we will get them the next time.